What's up YouTube? I'm Josh Newlin from Newlin Performance, and in this video I'm going to be explaining everything you need to know about NCAA Division III. So I've got a lot of questions recently in my DMs on Instagram of just asking me to explain NCAA Division III, or people ask about college and then they start asking about Division III and what makes it different and what's the skill level like, what's the deal with scholarships, how is the level compared to NAIA and D2 and D1, and just a lot of questions like that. So I thought I might as well make a whole video about it just to explain everything you need to know. So NCAA Division III is the largest out of the 3 divisions of the NCAA. It has well over 300 schools in the division, and typically D3 schools are pretty small schools. They're more academic focused. The whole division in general is meant to be more academic focused because Division III schools cannot give out athletic scholarships, which I'll talk about in a little bit. D3 schools also seem to have a higher concentration on the East Coast for whatever reason. There's a lot of D3 schools on the East Coast, whereas in the West Coast, in California you'll find quite a few, and in Texas there's quite a few D3 schools, but where I'm from, Arizona, I don't think we have a single D3 school at all. So it's just kind of an interesting fact that the East Coast has so many D3 schools and most of the division seems to be over there. The first topic I want to talk about when it comes to D3 is the level of play compared to other divisions, because it's a big factor if you're deciding to go D3 versus D2 versus NAIA. D3 obviously is a 3rd division for a reason. It's meant to be not as high of a level as D2 or D1 obviously, but there are still a lot of great athletes. And the competition is very high every week. There are so many schools in the division that to be the best, you really got to be the best. I mean, it sounds kind of dumb now that I say it, but there's just so many schools that there's so much competition to be the best, to make it to the national to make it to the national tournament is very hard to do because there's so many schools all competing just to get into the tournament, let alone to progress through it and win it all. Now obviously your average D3 player isn't going to be as good as the average D2 or D1 player, but there still are surprisingly a lot of really good players that go D3. Sometimes they do it because they want to be closer to home. Some of them, they might choose to go to one of the best D3 schools in the country instead of going to an average D2 school because they want to be on a successful team with a good coach and a good program, whereas D2 might be higher level, more of a challenge, but they might not be get an offer from a winning team or a winning program. D2, D1, and NAIA more recently have also really started recruiting internationally, and D3 is still pretty far behind in that, but there still are players that in our conference we played against a few that clearly weren't from America. So just college soccer in general, and D3 is kind of the last one to catch on to it, it seems, but the recruiting internationally is bringing in a lot of really good players, a lot more good players coming to college soccer. And D3 schools tend to recruit a lot more locally, but it's still just expanding, and recruiting is becoming more and more of a process that you have to do nationwide and even around the world now. And like I said, D3 overall, the skill isn't going to be as good as D2 or D1, which is how it should be. D2 and D1 should be higher level, but there still are some D3 schools that can take it to some D2 and even D1 teams. For example, Trinity, they're in our conference, which is the SCAC, and they're in San Antonio, so they'll scrimmage some teams down there, and they scrimmaged UIW, University of Incarnate Word. They're a D1 school, and Trinity actually beat them. And I think it was like 4-1. So UIW definitely isn't a very good D1 program, but I think that can show you too how just because it's D3 doesn't mean that team isn't on an equal level or a close level to some higher division teams. And if you're at one of the best D3 schools in the country, you're going to get a lot more exposure if you're trying to play pro. And going D3 doesn't mean you're just going to be automatically written off anybody's list. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was cost and scholarships, because this should be for most people one of the biggest priorities when it comes to what school they're going to, how expensive it's going to be, how much they're going to owe in loans, what kind of scholarships they're getting, because that's a huge deal, and unfortunately college in America is very expensive. And like I said earlier, D3 is considered to be and supposed to be more academic focused, so they don't offer athletic scholarships, which can be kind of a bummer. But when you also really think about it though, especially for soccer, even if you're at a top D1 school in the nation, not every single player is going to be on a full ride, and unless you're an absolute 5-star recruit, you're not going to get a super substantial scholarship offer to play anywhere. A lot of guys at D2 or even D1, their scholarship offers are, maybe $3,000 a year, and it's rare for them to get offered more than like $10,000 a year in athletic scholarship, and even that's a lot. So it's not necessarily you're missing on a huge amount of money, but it just is kind of disappointing that you can't get that little extra bit to help you out. And D3 schools also tend to be more expensive because a lot of D3 schools are small private schools. For example, my school's tuition is about $28,000, and my total cost is between like $40,000 and $50,000 depending on the housing, the meal plan, fees, and then as well as the tuition. I'm also out of state, so that adds a little bit more to the cost. So it is pretty expensive, and even coming here is a lot cheaper than some other schools in my own conference and D3 in general. For example, I was interested in Occidental for a while, and I was talking to their coach a little bit, and they're like $70,000 a year in total expenses. So it's just, some of these D3 schools can be very expensive, and it's unfortunate, but if you're going to a good D3 school, the piece of paper you get, your degree might look better going to a private D3 school that's more academically focused than if you went to a D2, which most D2 schools are not known for their academics. So that's pretty frustrating, but I also just tell people, and just like I was told, is that grades are everything. Your academics are very important for paying for college. That's where you're going to get the vast majority of your money, unless you're, the American Messi and you're deciding to go play college soccer. You're not going to get everything paid for just because you're a good soccer player. You got to get the good grades. You got to apply for outside scholarships and grants, and probably have to take out some loans too. But if there was one good thing to take out of the fact that they don't offer athletic scholarships at this division, I would say it's that it kind of keeps your motivation off of just money, because if you're playing NAIA D2 or D1, your scholarship offer can change every year, and sometimes their motivation isn't just because of the passion for the game, it's that they want to get more scholarship money, or they don't want to lose the money they already have been offered. Of course, I'm really trying to look on the bright side here, but I think playing D3 is kind of makes you realize how much of a passion you have for the game if you want to keep playing and you want to keep really working hard when you're not getting any sort of scholarship from it. And I think it's a good lesson. Sometimes it reflects a lot of players' early professional careers where they're maybe still amateur and they're not even making anything, or they're just barely making anything. So D3 is kind of similar to that situation, I guess. And the last topic I want to cover when it comes to D3 is just like, what is the environment like on campus? I can't speak for all D3 schools. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is going to depend school to school. Fortunately, when it comes to college, it's hard to make just generalizations because every school's tuition is different, every school's scholarships they offer is different. Of course, like I said, D3 can only offer academic, but still that's going to vary from school to school. Every school's cost of housing, meal plan, every soccer team and program is going to be different in their rules. So I kind of have to be sort of vague because I have to generalize and I can't speak for every D3 school, and it's hard to represent a division that's so broad and so many schools in it. A lot of it is you just got to do the work on your own sometimes and research the school and figure out what they're about. But when it comes to the environment around D3 schools, normally the population seems to be, no more than 5,000 students. A lot of D3 schools are small private schools. Like I said, a lot of them are concentrated on the East Coast. When I'm going to Shriner University, I think we have a little less than 2,000 undergrad students here. We're in a small town called Kerrville, Texas, which there's only like 24,000 people that live here. As far as the environment here on campus, There's not much partying because we don't even seem to have enough people to get real parties going. There aren't a whole lot of distractions really because we are in such a small town. You know, whenever you leave campus, pretty much just to go eat or get groceries. But with that, it is also kind of frustrating sometimes. If we really want to go do something fun, you gotta drive like an hour to San Antonio. And then if we're not doing that, sometimes we're just bored in our room playing video games or just, you know, hanging out, you know, doing who knows what. So I think in some ways that's a positive thing because D1, D2, some NAIA schools, there's a lot of partying, there's a lot of big parties going on every night of the week, and that can be a major distraction to focusing on school, focusing on soccer. D3, not going to be as many parties, not going to be as many big distractions. A lot of D3 schools aren't in big cities, they're in smaller towns, so it should help you theoretically to focus more on school and soccer and those important things, but it can be frustrating when you're really bored on the weekends, especially here. A lot of people here are from Texas, so they'll just go home on the weekends, and I don't get to go home, it's too far away, so then you really get bored sometimes. So there are pros and cons to that. But that pretty much covers everything you need to know about Division III. Hope you enjoyed, maybe learned something new or heard something different, because I've been getting a lot of questions lately about this, and feel free to keep DMing me whatever questions you have, whether it's about soccer, fitness, college, you want to know what I do, you want to know something about me, just ask me. You need some advice or you just want a different perspective on something, you can always feel free to DM me on my social media. The link to those are in the description below. Thank you all for the support. Be sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what your experience is if you are at a D3 school or if you played at a D3 school, and then also maybe comment what your assumptions were about D3 or what your thoughts are on it. Go comment down below. Like and subscribe and turn the notifications on if you enjoyed this video and want to see more. The next one will be out Saturday night, and I'm going to get into making more soccer training videos because I rolled my ankle pretty bad about 3 weeks ago now, and it's finally getting back to full health pretty much, so I've finally got to start practicing again and not just lifting. So I'm definitely going to start making soccer training videos more often now. But thank you again, and I'll see you on the next one.